Welcome back, guys. Part 5. Okay, so in the last part we glued the box up. Okay, taking taking the clamps off. Okay, I've still got some tape on there, which comes off very easily because remember we sealed the sides in, when it was in its sort of flat form. Okay, so we'll just take off a wee bit of tape because we're going to veneer the lid now. We just want to make sure that there's no tape that's going to get trapped in there. Okay, when you're going to take the tape off too, don't just rip it off, sort of take it off still reasonably carefully, but it comes off nice and clean, and that tape there is really sort of quite aggressive. So sealing in the grain is the key. You can use, if you didn't, for instance, seal in the grain, you can use low tack tapes, but it's better off to have something a wee bit sort of like, I like something a wee bit stronger around the joints. Okay, so we've got this now. With the lid pressed in, you should be just fractionally below the surface. Okay, so the border that goes around there should be sitting slightly proud. Now, to bring that down, numerous methods to do that. You can use a wee sort of scraper. Okay, and if you are using a scraper, look, there's different types of scraper. This is just one of the ones sort of I use. I don't tend to sort of scrape that much, but if I'm going to scrape, I use these wee sort of quite wee solid jobbies. But you want to be sort of scraping inward. You don't want to be scraping out because you're just going to break off that veneer there. You're going to break off, sort of like tear it out a bit. So that's what you want to be doing. You want to be sort of scraping that around until it's flush. Now, like I say, I don't really sort of use the scraper much because, to be quite honest, it's quite a bit of work, and I get the same results with a sander. Plus, I actually want to sand the MDF as well, because there's fingerprints, there's bits of glue over it and all that sort of stuff. I want to make sure that when I apply the glue, it doesn't sort of like, if there was, say, like glue sort of on there or any grease or anything like that, you put the glue on, it'll move away from that area. So we want to make sure that the MDF takes the glue. Okay, so I've got like a sort of 120 grit disc here, and I'm just going to go around the borders and then the center. I'm not going to be sort of rounding over or anything like that. You want to go around it. You don't want to be sort of staying too long in the one area. You want to be going around it quite quick. Okay, glasses on because I can't see. Okay. So what you want to do as well is, stop it every so often and just check to see if you've sort of brought that border down flush with the MDF. Okay, so needs a wee bit more. Okay, and then just turn it around, because you'll tend to find that the side that is furthest away from you, will actually sort of sand down a lot quicker than when it's closer to you. Okay, because you're sort of like, the weight of the sander is sort of going out, towards the edge. So just turn it around, have another refill. Yeah, a wee bit off there. Okay, that's good. Sanded the centre, so it's all nice and clean. Want to give that a wee quick vac, and then what we'll do is we've got our veneer. We're going to veneer the top of that. Okay, so just before we sort of do that, in case you've been wondering who the Spielberg in the family is, it's Kate Spielberg, Kate Hawthorne, behind the camera. Just so you know. Okay, so right, we've got this, we've got our veneer. Now see if you've bought a kit, you'll notice that the veneer is just the size of the lid. There's no overhang, and that's fine. Okay, now if I wasn't going to be adding a chamfer to this afterwards, that would be a bit too tight. You would want some overhang, but with it being the size, we're going to chamfer into that anyway. So if by chance when you veneered you are out slightly, the chamfer will bring it in all nice and neat. Okay, right, now there's the inside of our box. So that's what you should be sort of looking at. Didn't have any glue squeeze out, nice and tight in round where the lid is, no squeeze out. And the glue groove, remember, does a fantastic job. Wee bit of extra work, but you know, the idea is to sort of get it right. There's nothing worse than having glue squeeze out and the inside of your box where you're actually going to see the lid, you're not going to line it. You know, you're going to have to start picking that off, and well, it's just it's messy, isn't it? Okay, so the way we're going to veneer it is we're going to apply glue, and then we're going to put our box down. Okay, what you need to do is you need to put, depending on what way you're going to sort of do this, we're going to use the manual presses, but you're going to need to build the inside out. Now we use this stuff, it's a polyurethane foam. You know, it's pretty hard. I mean, you can actually, if you really push down hard enough, you can sort of make a slight dent in it, but it's perfect. It cuts really easy, it's light, that can go in the inside, and then we'll put pressure down on that and veneer it. Okay, so what we're going to do is get some glue mixed up. We're going to use board-on this time for the lid. You can use sort of PVA if you want, not overly keen on it, as I said before, or the yellow woodworkers glue, or if you're sort of going to let it sit from now and say until tomorrow, you could use epoxy. Okay, but make sure if you're going to use epoxy, make sure you get your mix right. Use one of the wee gloss rollers that I spoke about, and make sure you add some colloidal silica, you know, because it's too thin, it'll just come through the grain. That's also a bit messy. Okay, so we're going to use board-on. See you in a minute. So got our board-on mixed up. Remember, board-on's a two-part mixture, especially formulated for veneer. Okay, right. Okay, so remember guys, a wee sort of gloss roller, again, it only sort of puts on the, it only sort of holds a certain amount. Obviously you can sort of splat it on, but the idea is to get a sort of nice, sort of, you know, uniform layer over the top. I mean, you can get these anywhere, but definitely you avoid sort of putting it on with a brush, because it's more likely going to be too thick of a layer and it's just going to squeeze through the grain. I mean, you always get a wee bit of sort of bleed through, but you want to sort of keep that the real minimum. Okay, so just as usual, load up, and make sure it's well spread. Okay, And sort of don't be really too concerned about if you get a wee bit of glue that comes just over the edge, because remember, we're going to sort of chamfer that anyway, and you know, that's going to take away any sort of like overrun. But again, don't be pushing down too hard, or you know, you'll just have like far too much. Okay, so have a wee look over it. Any areas that look a wee bit dry. Well, you don't want any dry areas, of course. So what I tend to do is I put it on and then I let it sort of sit for maybe, you know, 30 or 40 seconds. Okay, that way, you know, you'll see areas that'll have sort of maybe especially on the MDF, it'll absorb into a wee bit more. So what we'll do is we'll just we'll go over it and give it a nice wee sort of even out, and then everywhere's hit, and then we'll pop the veneer on. Okay. That's actually not looking too bad. A couple of wee areas there. Okay. And all you've got to do, if Mrs. Spielberg would move it all out, just give that a wee roller. Lovely. Okay. Okay, we've got our veneer. Remember I told you about the sort of, you know, two sides to veneer. Okay, that actually looks quite good both sides, but I think maybe that should be the outer. So we'll have that down. And what I tend to do is this. I just pop it over before putting it down, using my thumb as a balance. Steady. Okay, just lightly turn it over, have a wee look, and then okay, so that was my stomach. So rub it down, that'll grab. Okay. And then before you get your sort of your lower pressure plate, turn it up so the pressure's down. Want our board, piece of foam, okay, and let's see, you can use cling film, tin foil. I actually don't have any tin foil, so baking paper, okay, it's non-stick. Okay, just center that. Pressure block. And then into the press. Or again, if you don't have a veneering press, just use the clamps. reasonable pressure. Okay. Okay guys, so that needs to be in the press for at least an hour. 2 hours better. And what you'll find is, what I do is I tend to sort of like leave that sitting out. Okay. When that glue's dry, because that goes rock hard, the board on. When that's hard, that's done. Okay. And then I can take it on to the next stage, which will be chamfering, bit of sanding, and then we'll do some finish. Okay, see you shortly. So guys, top's now veneered, taking it out of the press, no squeeze out or bleed through. Okay, so I've taken the tape off, and nice 2-corner match. Okay, nice and sharp. So what we want to do is sand the top, because we're going to give it a wee coat of sanding sealer. Okay, and then we're going to take it down and put the chamfers on. Okay, so 180 grit on your block, or if you're going to use the sander, but you know, it's a small lid, so 180 grit's fine. Okay, on the block. And remember, you know, don't be doing this, because you're just going to be, and saying that, it's getting chamfered anyway, but it's best to sort of have, you know, keep your practice good. Okay guys, along with the grain, don't be going across. You know, you're just putting on unnecessary scripts that you're going to have to work really hard to get them out. Okay, I'll just give that a wee vac. Okay, so that's it sanded, nice and smooth. What we want to do is put on, you know, a sealer coat of sand sealer. Of course, my preferred choice is the ICA polyurethane sand sealer. You can use shellac, whatever you want. I highly recommend it. Okay, so I've got some mixed up here. Here's some I prepared earlier. Okay. I just use these wee foam brushes. Pretty good. So make sure you coat it well, guys. You know, don't be too sort of frightened about, you know, brush marks or anything like that. This, because, you know, a lot of that will disappear. Okay, and remember, this isn't the final finish. Just a sealer. Okay, have a wee look over that. That looks good. Okay, so I want to give that about, you know, half an hour or so to dry, and then we'll take it down and add the chamfers. Okay, see you shortly. So guys, I actually give the top 2 coats, sanded 400 grit between coats, give it another coat. Okay, so it's looking pretty decent. Now what I want to do first is I want to actually sand the bottom of this, okay, on the flatboard. Okay, I just want to talk a wee bit about the flatboard. My flatboard is like 18 mil. It's actually bolted to my table saw top. Now the reason it's bolted is because these boards, no matter how much you sort of try, I mean, they'll either never be flat or they'll never stay flat. So with me bringing it down onto my table saw each time, it's got like a very flat base. Okay, Now, it's very important that this board is flat. Actually, my board is slightly convex in the middle. Very, 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 very slightly. And that's just achieved by, you know, when on the underneath this here, I've actually got a few strips of masking tape. So when I bolt this down, it gives, this is exaggerated like, but it gives this, okay? I mean, it's fractional. It's maybe, what you end up with is, when you go to separate your box and you sand it flat and you put the lid down on top of the base, you end up with a very, very, very tiny gap in the middle here. That ensures that the sides are touching and there's no rocking. I mean, because if you want to sort of get your hinges fitted well, locks and so forth, you want that to be on top of that pretty flat, no rocking, or you're going to have problems with the hinges. Okay, so what I've got here is 120 grit, which is just double-sided tape down. Okay, now what I do is I actually put some talcum powder over this. That just prevents this from clogging up from any glue, stuff like that there. So I'll just take you through that now. A wee bit of talcum powder over it. Okay, it just acts as sort of like a dry lubricant. Very good. Okay, so what I want to do first, put the gloves on so I've got a nice bit of grip, and I just actually go diagonally. Okay, I don't do this, I go diagonally until I get onto another grit. Okay, so here we go. Okay, let's have a look at that. Okay, that looks good. Right, so the 120 grit obviously sort of flattens that very quickly. Now, on the likes of darker woods and so forth, you would definitely, 120 grit would be sort of far too coarse and you would notice them scores quite easily. So we'll put on a finer piece now. Just give this a wee vac. Okay, now I've only got one board. You could have two boards if you wanted, one with finer paper. But the reason I only have one board is, well, I know this is true, okay? Plus, if you have finer paper on another board, I mean, this wears out quite quickly, which means that, you know, quite regularly you're going to have to change this, right? And to be quite honest, they're a bit of a pain to change because they're stuck down with double-sided tape, so it's a bit messy. So all I sort of do is, let's see. Okay, I've got these wee toggle clamps at each side, and this is sort of like what you would class as just a bit of a quick change. So that gets pushed down, and you want to sort of stretch your material towards that corner, down, out to that corner, and then, okay, so we've got that, and if we need to change that, we don't have to sort of remove all the sort of adhesive of the tape and so forth. We just throw it away and pop another one on. So, okay, so what we want is a wee bit of talc over that, and it smells nice too. Okay, so let's sand this bit and get rid of these scratches. Lovely. Okay. Nice and flat. Now, when you're actually doing the sanding of this, you want to sort of have your weight balanced. You don't want to be like this because what you're going to have is most of the pressure is going to be at this edge here, you know, because that's where your weight is. So you want to be sort of like quite balanced. Okay, all right. Okay, so Now that we've sort of sanded that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a chamfer along the top edge and along the bottom edge. Dresses it up nicely, plus it brings a wee bit of the sycamore into play. Nice wee contrast. Okay, just give this a wee vac. And as you can see, the paper's nice and clean. It doesn't have any sort of glue marks on it. It's not gummed up. You know, the talcum powder definitely works as a good job. Okay, right, writer table. What I've got in here is my chamfering bit. Okay, now this is a PCD bit, which is polycrystalline diamond. Okay, tipped. Very good, very sort of hard wearing, and it also produces a very clean cut. Okay, now of course you can just use a sort of an ordinary chamfer bit. I like to use mine, you know, with the fence. I'm not overly keen on sort of using them sort of like, let's see, you know, for instance, well, that's not a chamfering bit, but if you're using it with a bearing, you know, you're going to more than likely put quite a dent into your side. You know, our sides are pretty good, so the less marks the better at this stage. Okay, so I've just put down sort of 4mm MDF here, or it's 3mm, either way, sort of quite thin MDF, because as I go along, I don't want to sort of end up with lots of sort of scratch marks. This is still, you know, this isn't the final finish, but still you want to sort of keep it pretty, sort of clean, mark free. You don't want big scores up it. You're going to have to sand all that out, you know. Okay, so this works well. It's literally just taped down, but I've also got, when I turn the dust extractor on for the router, that holds it down as well. Okay, so we're going to do a wee test cut just on a bit of MDF, just to make sure that we've got the we're not taking off too much. Okay, okay, just a wee bit of scrap MDF. Okay guys, there's a wee test cut in a bit of MDF. It's about a sort of 2.5mm chamfer. Okay, so that looks fine. What we'll do is we'll cut the top one first, and then we'll cut the bottom one, see where we are, and then what we'll do is we'll move the fence fractionally just to take off a final wee sort of clean skin. Okay, I mean, if you've got a chamfer bit and it's a bit dull, I would sort of take it, you know, small amounts at a time so that you get the cleanest cut. You know, you don't want sort of burn marks and all that sort of stuff. Okay. Let's see. Okay guys, so the chamfer in the bottom, that looks nice and neat. Okay, nice and clean. Now the chamfer around the top, I think what I'll do is I'll just make that a wee bit bigger. I think, you know, it's not really sort of showing up enough of the sycamore. So we'll adjust the fence and take another cut off that. I mean, you can use your own judgment on how much you want to reveal, but I think a wee bit more would be quite nice. But it's nice and neat, you know, and it sort of looks like, well, I suppose it looks like a nice wee sort of sharp inlay, okay? Okay folks, now how neat's that? Nice contrast, easily done, hassle free. Okay. Right, so the next stage is we're going to add a wee tiny micro bevel down the edge here of the chamfer. Very, very fine, okay, down the edge, but that's getting done by hand. Okay, so let's go up to the next workshop and do that. So we're about to put these wee micro bevels on, but first what I want you to do is I want you to mark the inside so that we actually go to separate, you know which part tallies that to which part. Okay, so we'll just mark this A. Okay, you're actually only making one box, so to be quite honest, you don't have to sort of really pen it, because even a bit of tape there would have been fine. Okay, so when we separate this, we obviously know that that's the front and it tallies up to the front there. So, okay, so first the micro bevels, sort of hard block. Okay, so that's just hard plastic. Got a wee bit of sandpaper on there just to stop it sliding about too much. The micro bevels on these are very, very small. Okay, what it also does is it helps, you know, hold the finish, whereas on a sharp edge, you know, it can't really sort of hold any. Okay, so make sure, try and angle the box so that, you know, the light's coming in and you can sort of clearly see, you know, what you've beveled and what size it is. So very sort of light pressure. Lovely. All done and dusted. Okay, so what we've got to do is the areas that are currently uncoated are the bottom, the bevel, these wee pieces, and this bevel chamfer here. Okay, so wee bit of sand sealer, whatever your choice of poison is, and we'll just actually apply this, you know, with this wee toady rag that Mrs. Spielberg cut. Look at the size of that, my goodness. Okay, so we just want to dip it in, let it absorb, bring it out, and let it absorb until the wetness goes in. You don't want to be sort of firing on there and it's sort of dripping all over the place. So, and it's okay if it goes on to the top a wee bit, that's fine. Okay, so what we'll have to do is we'll have to let that sit for about 10 minutes just to dry so that we can turn it over. So, see you in 10 minutes. Okay guys, let's do the micro bevels and then underneath, okay? Just a wee sort of dab. Remember, just let that absorb in. Just a wee bit down here, just to seal that. That's all it is. Okay, let's go around here. more on. Okay, that's it. Maybe 10 minutes. I forgot to say, if you were sort of using, you know, a chamfer bit that really wasn't that sharp, you would have probably needed to go for them chamfers first with maybe 400 grit, you know. But if you are going to go for your chamfers, well, first of all, you really do want to start with a new bit or a very sharp bit, okay? But if you are going to go for your chamfers, you want to keep and hold on to the crispness and them sharp edges. You know, that's just going to show a real sign of quality. So when you're doing it, be very careful. Don't just be sort of ploughing along there, you know, hoping for the best. Take your time with it, you know, because these are the areas that people see. That's the detail, you know, and that's going to set your boxes aside from anybody else, apart from the other guys that are watching this video. So we're going to let that sit a few minutes, and then I'm going to sort of denib, and then we're going to coat it all with sand sealer again, okay? And then once that's fully dried, we're going to denib, web brax, and then wax it all. This is prior to separation, okay? I see a lot of sort of like boxes on sort of Instagram and so forth. A lot of people cut their lid, separate their lid from their base, and then they do the finishing. Well, to be quite honest, this is the easiest method. You've just got to be very careful with the box. You can't be sort of dragging it over sort of a rough workbench and stuff like that. But it's definitely the easiest method. And then the only thing then you have to coat is the inner edges, which can be done with the same sort of method like that. Again, you just have to be sort of careful, but it's definitely the best way to approach box making. Okay, see you shortly. So guys, coated all them areas. Now if you remember, the actual sort of sandwich was only given sort of one coat of sand sealer. I've actually given the lid 2 coats, so I'm not actually going to give that any more coats. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to denib, because the sides still feel a wee bit sort of rough, the top's nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to denib the sides, give them another coat, and then after that we can sort of take it to, you know, the wax finish. Okay, so 400 grit, small cork block. Okay, okay guys, just have a wee check over it. It's all okay. That feels good. Okay, so what we're going to do, if you remember sort of the inside pressure block that I used for the for veneering the lid, so what we're actually going to do is we're going to set that on top of that. Okay, so that's going to give you a chance, something to hold. Okay, usually I spray my boxes, so I usually have a wooden jig that sort of holds it up, and then I can spray it. Hence the reason for not having the base in. But we're doing this one sort of by hand, so we'll just pop it onto that. Okay, a wee bit of sand sealer that I mixed up a minute ago. Foam brush. Okay, so you want to sort of be able to sort of catch you know, the light. Again, dip it in and let it absorb in, okay? Okay. Turn that around. Let that absorb in. Okay, next side. So you want to be sort of pulling off the side, starting from the center, pulling off the side. Write that down. Okay. Okay, and juggle it in the middle. Okay. Right, so what we'll do is I'll have to let that dry. So next week we'll look at waxing, separation, and taking it further on. But I just want to say one thing. I just want to say thanks to all our customers that have been shopping at Fine Box Hardware. We're dedicated to customer service, and you know, without you guys there wouldn't be a Fine Box Hardware. So big thank you. See you next week.